Welcome to Our Next Existence by Katie and the Chorus. I'm Katie, former technology strategist turned reluctant spiritual medium, and I channel messages from the Chorus, a group of beings just beyond our sensory perceptions who are loving, expansive, and who greatly enjoy sharing their perspective of us. Join us each week as we share and discuss their ideas about humanity's existence, purpose, and future. Concepts you can draw from to accelerate your path, expand your perceptions, and ultimately step into the flow of the universe and your life. Welcome back, everybody. Still no chorus this week, just Katie. In the weeks following the I Just Can't Channel Anymore, which I talked about starting 2 episodes ago, I had to come to terms with the fact that perhaps there is and has been a part of me, many parts, to be honest, that have benefited by all of this spiritual understanding and expansiveness and connection and channeling. But that the earthbound or 3D, as some people say, part of me might be feeling a little neglected. Especially after a year of what by any definition would have been 3D chaos in terms of family life and home life, I could understand how there might be a part of me that had pretty much just had it with all of this. Because they all seem a little synonymous, don't they, in awakening? All sorts of sweeping life changes happen to us as our perspectives change, as we awaken to more, as we feel more, as we understand more. And by a 3D viewpoint, this would rightly be considered not great. Our 5 senses mind, as we say here, is built upon all of these beliefs about control, protection, prevention, making plans, having mental projections, lots of repetition and redundancy, feeling accomplished, checking things off that we thought needed to be done and getting those done, paying the bills, getting the groceries, building the thing, cleaning the thing, living the life, and sometimes having some fun. In awakening, as I've often found in talking to others who have gone through this process too, that last part is surprisingly often the part that seems the hardest to come by. And by that I mean the fun. I have met many awakened and awakening people, as we say, who go through these sudden and rapid shifts, and sometimes prolonged shifts in their perspective, and then still have to live here. They have family members that need to be cared for, and somehow, often, being the big-hearted people that they are, they end up being the family member who cares for others. They have jobs that they need to sustain. They have bills they have to pay. For many people, we come to a juncture in our awakening where it feels like we're ready to just tap out. We've had enough. We've been through all of the roller coaster of all of these things, and yet we still have to set our alarm and get up for work. It seems unjust, can seem brutal, can seem like just too much. In prior waves, we might say, of awakened people, I have found that most resolve this issue by stepping back from the 5 senses world as much as possible while still being part of it. I have met many incredible people who are hiding under rocks. Some of these rocks are quite literal. They have moved out into the forests, out into remote locations, away, away, away from that 5 senses world that is so different than the realm of possibilities in which they exist. Often they spend most of their time at home if they can. They don't have websites. They don't have podcasts. They're capable of extraordinary things and seeing extraordinary things. And in the ways that they have to interact with the rest of the world to just get by or pay the bills, they tend to stay under the radar. They'll look very normal in a way. They'll be an average person at the job. They won't be the standout star or the one trying to get all the accolades or even the one looking for promotion. In fact, they tend to disdain that kind of stuff. They're there to do a job to pay the bills and then return to the forest from which they came. I was having a conversation with a friend recently who has, I would say, recently started her awakening journey, but it's like, where do you pick it off? Where does it start? I don't know. But anyways, she's really coming into a crescendo sort of a lot of this stuff. And she called me from the parking lot outside a store. And we were talking, and I didn't know this is where she was. And we were talking about things that she was grappling with. And then I brought this topic up. And I said, yeah, this is why sometimes in awakening, we get to these points where it's hard to kind of be in the same day-to-day five senses world the way we were. And then she goes, yeah, I'm sitting in my car right now, and I really, really don't want to go into this store. And I have been there so many times. And I think I would have already moved to a remote location or a deserted island by now. But I have a son who is still in this and enjoying this and being a kid and having a school and having friends and all the drama that friends bring. And I understand what that experience brought to my life through all the ups and the downs. And so I'm not ready to just hit the eject button. So what do we do? What do we do when we're all sitting in the car and we don't want to go into the store? And that is what we're going to talk about today. But first, I would like to invent a word. Not because this is a phrase that you have to remember when you're explaining this to somebody else or anything like that. In fact, you could make up your own words for it, which would be even more fun. I'm making up a word simply for the joy of creating something. And I guess technically it's two words, but let's just call it one word because we'll mash it all together and make it one word because we can, and why not? So the word or phrase is material wellness. Now this will conjure to mind many things for a human, especially those of us who've been down the path of awakening and are still somehow magically appended to the five senses as we are doing this. Material is often viewed by us as, the stuff that's here. Cars, houses, clothes, fancy shoes, fancy watches, material stuff, food, blankets, items. Sometimes that idea of material also extends to our physical bodies. So I am here in my material, thing that I use to move around material stuff. Now, a phrase we have used is material wealth. Wealth and the idea of wealth stretches across many of our time places right now. We're having grand experiences of wealth and also acute experiences of the lack of wealth. Now, wealth, from a viewpoint like the choruses, could be viewed as an aspect of abundance, but could also be viewed as an aspect of survival. If you put many different numbers of wealth across a continuum, and then you dropped game players across that continuum, something that you might find is corollary is the degrees to which they believe they must fight for their own survival. Typically, people who have more abundance have a lighter sense of the daily grind than those who are living paycheck to paycheck. There is a different felt sense of stress and also of connection to the world. Now, this is truly a kaleidoscope of things, but we're simplifying here just to make a point. That if we look at the material as a proxy for survival, those who are surrounded by material things may be having a very different experience of survival than those who do not. Now, we might tend to think of this in terms of people who have the fancy car and people who do not. But of course, this spreads across our entire game board. So think of this in terms of different time places, known and also unknown, across our civilization, meaning look at different points in time. So let's imagine that there was and is a civilization a lot like Atlantis or a lot like Lemuria, or potentially even some of these concepts of a greater Tartaria. Civilizations that potentially had greater access to sustainable energy, had a different understanding of harnessing the energy of the earth, or potentially had a different idea of agriculture. We have found terra preta, a sort of bafflingly fertile type of earth, in the Amazon and in a few other places that many are now contributing to potentially knowledge that was held by a prior civilization, which would have made agriculture a type of flourishing that would be difficult for us to even comprehend based on some of our agricultural processes today. So if we look at, let's say, 7 or 8 places in our remembered history that seem to have an understanding or an ability of energy, agriculture, and potentially even healing that we don't have today. Comparing their times to ours, where might we be in a greater pitch for survival? Ding, ding, you got it. Right here in our time from which I am broadcasting this podcast. I may be blessed enough to not living exactly paycheck to paycheck, but I do have to take care of my health every single day, or I start to notice sometimes a return of symptoms. I do exist in a society where it seems we are constantly in a struggle against natural elements, where we are constantly in a struggle against potentially governing powers that seem not to really have the best interests of everyone involved. I am existent in a time place that has kind of a lot going on about it, about survival. So in our new phrase, material wellness, let's, set that material thing to the side for a second. And let's look at this idea of wellness. Now, wealth is something we've always said, material wealth, you have a lot of it. You're maybe not trying to survive. Or maybe you're just from a different civilization in which you have a wealth of knowledge, and that knowledge gives you a greater ease of existence or a greater longevity. Okay, well, let's look instead at a concept like wellness, which we have here in our time place. Wellness being a sense of sort of balance or harmony of parts. So typically, we talk about wellness in terms of the physical body, meaning you are well in your body. You are healthy, you have vitality, and ideally, you have nothing wrong with you. Usually, people search out wellness when they are trying to be more well. This concept of wellness comes out most strongly for us when we don't have it. Illness often draws us into this idea of wellness, and often it supersedes the resolution of the symptoms itself in this day and age. When someone is drawn to these concepts of, I want wellness, I don't want to just heal, I want balance in my system, I want a sense of wholeness. The illness is often resolved, and then they continue to merge into these topics. So maybe they came in for a kidney or a knee or some sort of ailment, but then they sort of expand beyond that into meditation, into changing the ways that they eat, into finding a lifestyle or a job that's less stressful, or is maybe more in touch with who they are and what they love to do. Now, in that process, we don't often talk about material wellness. I mean, sure, it's an offshoot of maybe I'm going to simplify my life and I'm going to only wear organic clothing now or something like that. That material aspect of my life is changing. But there isn't often an emphasis on this because it would seem in many ways that the five senses world is what generated a lot of the illness we're trying to resolve. There is an idea or a direction to move away from five senses experiences and more into a simplified wholeness that's expressed in these other kinds of lifestyles and existence. Said another way, it's not often that you find a wellness guru driving a Lamborghini. And in fact, most people would doubt the efficacy or the authenticity of that guru's advice were he or she to do that, because there is this idea that these two things are at odds. If you are living a whole type of lifestyle in touch with the planet, with the universe, with your spirit, why on earth would you want to drive a Lamborghini? See what I mean? But now this concept comes up in even softer ways, and often because it is being lived and experienced through five senses humans who are awakening, in that there seems to be a type of duty or obligation to, or responsibility over these new concepts and keeping them, I will say, pristine from the five senses world. And this is what I mean. I have heard people describe experience in ways many times about this type of, transition into this idea of wellness that would seem to convey that the five senses world from which they came from, that strictly speaking, I was just in a job, I just did the daily grind, I was getting sick, I had no idea, now I'm awakened, there's so much else out there, right? Seems to be that world represents a type of contaminant that if you bring over too much of that world into this new world that you've discovered, you are actually regressing. It is perhaps not surprisingly understood as a straight line, a trajectory. I am marching through my life and I came into this expansive place where I encountered these new sets of concepts. And these concepts are better than the old concepts. And I don't want any of those old concepts sneaking in here because then it will sort of like muddy the water, right? It's going to change it. It's going to make these new things that I've found in this new world maybe less pure. Which sort of brings up an important question, doesn't it? What is purity? In a human context, in this world that we're all in and awakening to and from, what is this concept of purity? And what does it mean energetically? Now, as humans, most of us like the simple idea of purity. Now, before we append it to anything like race or war, all those other amazing aspects of our game of limitation, which we created, before we do any of that, if we just stick with the concept of purity, it feels like a beautiful thing to us, doesn't it? If I talk about pure love, pure light versus love, light, do you feel a difference? What is pure love versus love? Let's do another example, something that's a little like easier and down on our wavelengths. If I say chocolate and then I say pure chocolate, do you feel the difference? Now, we're not here to judge. I'm not about to do like and then it's limiting and it sucks because this. Although sometimes it feels like that, right? As we awaken to what was here and we start to see it from other aspects, there is a part of us that feels like we got lied to. And that part is infinitely valid in this infinitely valid universe of infinitely valid things. And that's okay. But in understanding that that's the part of us that is speaking from the standpoint of the illusion and awakening, we can understand that that's a transition that it's going through. It is a valid perspective to feel like we were lied to. And it is also a valid perspective to understand how that worked to our benefit. And it is also a valid perspective to prefer something else, our preference is and forever will be valid. Okay, so I'm not trying to do a gotcha. I just want us to feel what we feel here as humans about the word pure. Okay, let's do another one. Let's do like a geographic location kind of example. Let's say we're going to a beach. And I say, we're going to go spend an entire day on a tropical beach. And some part of you is like, yeah. Okay. And now I'm going to say, we're going to go spend a day on a pure tropical beach. What does that even mean? I don't even know what a pure beach is. But do you feel the difference? There's something like, wow, pure? Well, I mean, what is a pure tropical beach? Like if I saw a billboard for that, I would be like, what does it mean? I don't know. I'm intrigued. Then I might think maybe it doesn't have any trash or it doesn't have any pollution, right? We might go to like a sanitation aspect of purity. And that's usually where we start. The physical five senses expresses itself first, often in our perspectives here, which is how we remained in a limited perspective here, as always saw. And so often we start with this idea of physical contamination, where purity means it's nothing else other than the essence of what you want in that experience. So when I say pure love, when I say pure chocolate, when I say pure tropical beach, it means no other interference, no other noise, no other anything that would distract you from the full experience of what it is that you want to experience. Now, this is a valid concept because if we go back and look at what the chorus talks about in focus versus attention, an argument could be made that purity is an expression of focus. Focus, according to the chorus, is a rebuffing of all other energies. It is a narrowing down into a specific, which is very satisfying for a five senses mind. It is why we say, leave me alone, turn off the music, close the door. I need to focus. It's just you and the specific thing that you want to sink your teeth into in this incredible five senses experience. And you know what? That's what brought us here. There were moments in our history where we were more expansive. And because of our paths of greatest expansion, we craved, we wanted something that was more limited. We maybe didn't have the perception back then of understanding that that's what we were walking towards because that would have violated the experience of the limitation itself. There was a moment, many, in fact, in our history where this delicious, limiting, focused idea of purity brought us into greater and greater experiences of limitation. Is that a bad thing? It's up to you. It's up to you and your system of beliefs and where you are and what you're expanding into and what you want. It is all valid. It's all just diverse and varied and infinite and expanding and incredible and unique. And aren't there times still when focus feels like a relief? It feels like something we could actually put our mental arms around. It feels contained. It feels under control. It feels safe. It feels like we won't be bothered by any of that riffraff that then we would have to deal with and be interrupted by. We could just be left alone for our minute with a thing we just want to focus on. That part of us is and will be still alive within us as we expand from these frequencies. We are not rejecting any parts of us as we awaken, we are not hacking them off and jumping on into other higher frequencies. As much as that might appeal as a concept to many, coming from an understanding of the possibilities of the infinite universe and realizing just how limiting this world is and has been. But as the Course has began to express before I burnt out and hit pause, we are transforming reality through our presence here, not by leaving it and turning around and then judging it, but by being alive and vibrant and expressive here in this world. We create new worlds. And isn't that an extraordinary contrast or maybe comparison to purity? The idea of rich and abundant and varied creation and existence. What if I said, instead of a pure tropical beach, it's actually the most vibrant, most alive, most diverse, most colorful beach you have ever been to in your entire existence? There are more shades of blue in the water than you have ever seen. There is the sound of more birds and more life than you have ever heard. There are more colors of clouds in the sky, more types of light shining on the sand, and the sand itself is so full of different crystals that it practically sparkles different colors at each different time of the day. And guess what? While you're there, you don't have to think about anything that you need to do or what time it is or where to go next. You don't need sunscreen. There's nothing to prevent or protect yourself from. Actually, the entire environment feeds your entire soul and being and physical body too in a way that you've never experienced. It's the abundance of infinite creation, and it will abundantly refresh and invigorate your entire being. And you know what's amazing? What's amazing is you'll sense and feel and perceive all of this because of where you are in your expansiveness. You know, had I called you up like 500 years ago, I don't know if you could have done this because you all were so, distracted with sort of all your technologies and healing modalities and amazingly advanced societies. But now you're finally coming into this time place where it feels like nonstop pitches for survival because you realize the possibility of so many other ways to exist. And so now when you come to the beach, it's not just the beach. You see ecosystems, you see people, you see families, you wonder about what you're feeling. You imagine possibilities in the water. It's not just the beach anymore. And this amazing, incredible beach that I'm going to take you to isn't either. And the truth is that they're actually the same beach. And they're possible because of your expansiveness and your connection to infinite energy, which you are now becoming more conscious of by the moment. And so when you and I and we all gather at a beach from that resonance, it's incredible what is created. You can move more than you ever could before into these frequencies, into these versions, these time places of this extraordinary beach. And I get it. We're all in a forest right now. We're all under a rock. We're at that phase where we realize that this is quite a lot because we feel quite a lot. But if we give ourselves a chance to feel out being well in this material place, with each time that we laugh or have fun or remember the feeling of sunlight on our skin the sound of busy hustling, of people who are still busy hustling in the five senses. The more we remember with fondness the times that we were there too. The more we explore with delight any numbers of flavors and chocolates, the more we feel infinitely varied sensations of love. The more you'll feel like everywhere you go is an opportunity to express your godlike powers of creation. Whether you go into the store or you stay in the car, or you lift the car into the sky, or you teleport to a different place, your freedom is growing, your choice is expanding because of the diversity of things that you can sense and the ways that you will express that ability in this world. When you are ready, come out from under your rock. I'll be here. We all will be. Because we love you infinitely. Thanks so much for listening. We hope you found these messages to be helpful. May they accelerate you on your path wherever you'd like it to go. For more information on the books which correspond to these podcast seasons, our podcast, live events, or how to get in touch with us, visit katieandthechorus.com. Thanks again. See you next time.